This is the timeline of my short film Flaws, which I made in collaboration with Epidemic Sound earlier this year, and today I'm going to show you some tricks and techniques for music editing and sound design that I used for this film. So what I'm going to show you in this breakdown is firstly how I edited the music for the film, so that includes cutting the music to time it perfectly, and also how I manipulated the music by working with stems. And secondly, I'm going to show you how I approached the sound design to enhance the sequences in the film that could benefit from some extra sound design. That includes my general approach, the sounds I added to complete the Foleys, the sounds I added as an effect, and how I manipulated those sound files to match the intention of the effect I was aiming to achieve. Feel free to use the chapters to skip to the part that you're interested in. With that said, let's begin. The film begins with this lovely waltz by Luella Gren, and to make it fit as the intro of the film, I downloaded the stems to cut them like this, so that I'm effectively using just the beginning and the ending of the track. The reason for using the stems is that I wanted to place the cuts in different areas for a more seamless transition. Many tracks don't require this, however this specific transition was a little bit complicated and therefore I had to work with the stems. The rest of the music in this film is basically some variation of this technique. Seeing as I'm not working with a composer but with already finished tracks, I have to find ways to chop them in a way that it works with the timing of my film. The next track was very simple. I just took the piece and faded in and out the part that I needed. One more notable mashup is this last piece of music, which are actually two different pieces that work together so well that I could seamlessly mix them together as if they were one track. So after the climactic ending of this score, I simply faded in this particular part of another score, and to me at least, this sounds like a natural continuation of the same score. Anyway, let's move on to the sound design. So my approach to the sound design in this film was to be subtle and enhance the film where it needed it, but otherwise keep things rather simple. So that means the majority of the sound is actually just the on-set sound I recorded. Hereby you must of course keep in mind that a large portion of the film is a monologue, so of course the sound in that case just consists of the voice. Next I added a layer of ambient sounds and other Foleys which should enhance the sound design, but these are still all sounds that sound natural, they should just add some more detail. So here for example, I added a track simply called Train Station to add an overall ambient sound to the scene. Additionally, I downloaded some footsteps. This one is called Female Boots Walk. I cut out different pieces of this track to match the boots in the shot. And so we have a total of just 4 layers: boots, ambience, voice, and music. Here's just the boots and the ambience. So you can tell that this doesn't sound realistic. The boots are really loud and there's some fabric sounds missing from the clothes. However, that doesn't really matter because with the voice and the music you wouldn't hear those anyway, so just these 2 layers suffice to make a good sound in my opinion.
How should it sound when impacted by a pair of expensive leather shoes that signify societal status?
What I personally find more interesting in this particular film is the sound that I added as an effect to elevate the viewing and listening experience, but it doesn't really sound like realistic Foleys. I found this clip called Stiletto Heel 6, which has this very strong clacking sound that I was going for. I chopped it up again to match the footage, and then soloed this layer and rendered just this part plus another 10 seconds of nothing. You'll see why the 10 seconds are important. I exported this as a .wav file and then imported that file and just put it right below the original clip, but muted those clips, but kept them just in case. Then I added an effect called Studio Reverb, which gives you a bunch of controls, which is key for the next part. Most settings I kept at the default, but I set the decay to the maximum, and then I set the wet to 25%. With these types of effects, you're always adjusting the dry and wet balance. By having the dry setting at 75 and the wet setting at 25, you can still clearly hear the original sound, but there will be some reverb added. And to make the effect increase, I came here to the effect controls and added 2 keyframes. One at the start where I kept the wet set to 25%, but then I set it to gradually increase to 50% so that the reverb becomes more and more intense. This is what that then sounds like without the music and the voice. Do you hear how towards the end the reverb becomes noticeably longer? That is why it was important to add the 10 seconds to the clip, because otherwise the effect will just be cut off, but now it just fades out naturally. The next section of the film I would like to show you is this overly dramatic scene here where I added quite a few sound effects. The music here is really loud, so there was no need for Foley sounds, but the effects really enhanced the overdramatic nature of the scene. Here's what it sounds like without the music. Pretty dramatic, I know, but intentionally. If you saw the film, you'll know that this scene is intentionally overdramatic in a comedic sense. Anyway, what went into these effects? The original sound clips that I used are so-called wooshes. Yeah, they're actually called that, and they sound something like this. I downloaded different versions to have some diversity in the sound. I used a few wooshes of varying lengths for different movements in the shot that I wanted to emphasize. In the top layers, I mostly just faded them in and out appropriately, however in the bottom layer I did some manipulation of the files, which I think is worth explaining. I added this clip to enhance the protagonist's leap again, but the original sound is just too strong and high and fast in a way. So to make it work, I slowed it down to 50%, which makes it much deeper sounding. However, there were still too many high frequencies here, which didn't fit the slow motion, so I added a low-pass filter which cuts the frequencies above 1495 Hz, and leaves us with this sound. And so with these two techniques, slowing the clip and adding a low pass where needed, I added the other wooshes where they made sense, and that is how I made this sequence. I hope you enjoyed this little insight into my post-production process for the short film, and that you could find something of value in the techniques that I shared. Thank you, Epidemic Sound, for having me again, and with that said, goodbye.